Okay, so we've got our fretboard blank attached to the radiusing jig, and this jig is a pretty simple contraption here. It's just got a base with a couple of radiused ends on it. You can see them here, and if you look closely you can see that I've got a rabbet cut into each one of these radiuses, and that's just simply for these bearings to ride on. You can see the bearings sitting in there right now on that side and on this side as well, and it just allows the this sled here to stay on track as we move it back and forth on the radius here while we radius the board. You can see there's little rails there, and we have the colt router that's going to sit on top of there, and it's going to ride on top of there, and it's going to slide back and forth here as we radius. So what we'll do is we'll start it at the end. We'll do a pass with the router, then we'll slide the router down on the sled. We'll do another pass, slide the router down, do another pass, and we'll go all the way down the fretboard until we get the entire thing radiused. This will only do generally a rough job. It's not going to give us a finished product. We're going to have to clean it up with a radiusing beam, but it still saves a significant amount of time being able to take the bulk of the material off with the jig and with the router bit, as opposed to just using the radiusing beam. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll set the depth of our bit by just setting the router on top of the sled here, centering it over the blank, and dropping the blade till we just come till the bit just sits right on the top of the center of the fretboard, and then we'll be ready to radius. Okay, so we've got this roughly radiused here with our bit, and you can see it's still got quite a bit of tool marks on it from the bit. But like I said, we're going to go back and we're going to straighten this all up, and we're going to smooth it all out with a 16-inch radiusing beam. So it's about 18 inches long, and it's just going to take a few strokes. What we'll do is we'll put some hash marks or storylines on here in a crisscross pattern with some chalk or whatever, and that will be able to let us gauge our process while we're sanding, make sure we get things nice and flat. Okay, so after about 5 minutes of sanding, you can see where our low spots still are here. We got this area here, kind of in here. You can see anywhere where that isn't nice and smooth, generally those are our lower spots. We got to bring all the rest of this material down to the lowest level here, and yeah, I'd say about another probably 5-10 minutes of sanding, we should be pretty much there. Okay, we've got the radius done on this fretboard here, and as you can see, as a result these fret slots have generally disappeared on the outsides, and have probably lost some depth in the middle as well. That's just one of the things that comes with radiusing the board. The idea is the first time I do it with the saw blade, it just gives us a general idea. These will be much quicker to just zip up and do. I can just set the blade in the slot, put it up against the guard on my jig that I have, and saw away. It still will take a little bit of time though, but like I said, just one of the things that's part of a build. Once I get to that point, then we can flip this over and we can actually get to installing the electronics for the LED fret markers, excuse me. So you'll notice though on this side that I have cut one slot, and this slot is cut to the proper depth right now. And the reason why I did this is I just wanted to see when this fret is complete, when there's a fret seated in here, I wanted to make sure that it doesn't intrude on these little recesses here where we're going to be putting the electronics. Reason being is, like, if I have a piece of exposed wire in that channel and the fret tang comes down and makes contact with it, well, if it makes contact on this side and on this side, this is positive and negative, then what will happen is it's going to cut the circuit off here, and I'm not going to get any lights lighting up down the fretboard. We don't want to have the frets with with power running through them. It's just not something you want. So we're looking good here. It's cut all the way to the proper depth, and I'm not getting any daylight through there at all. So it looks like we're going to be good to go on the entire board, hopefully. Like I said, it really only plays into right here. As soon as we get past this part and going down, the negative bar stops short of this area. So it's just especially critical from here back. But yeah, so we're going to get to cutting these fret slots, getting them the proper depth, and when we get that done, we'll come back and have another look before we start the fret markers. Okay, on to recutting the fret slots. We're going to be using a fret saw here with a depth stop, and we set the depth stop by taking our fret wire once again, placing it on the blade here, and then just bringing the stop down till it hits the bottom of the tang there. We know we got our depth there. So this is going to take a little while, but what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to rest it in the slot first where we know the slot is. We're going to line it up with the ends of these stops here on both sides here, if you can see that, there and there. So it's going to go on like so, and then we're just going to lightly just work back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Once we get a good line going here, we're not going to slip out. We can kind of angle it backwards to start to get our radius, and each of these slots is going to take a little while. Almost slipped out there. They're going to take a while, so it's something that you'll probably want to do, you know, 4 or 5 frets, and if your arm starts getting tired, stop and take a rest or whatever, because you don't want us to be slipping out while you're recutting these and marring up this fretboard now that we got it nice and smooth and nice radius on it. So we want to make sure that we stay inside the slots here. So if you start to get tired, your arm starts to get tired, it doesn't really matter how much concentration you're putting into it. You know, you just don't have the control when your arm is tired. So if it starts to get tired, just take a rest for 5 minutes and, you know, go back, cut a few more frets, take another break. Who doesn't like breaks, right? Okay, so we're gonna get going on this because it's gonna take a little while. Okay, so as we can see here, we got all of our slots all brought down to the proper depth here, ready to go pretty much. And you'll notice here that the depth guard marred the surface on each of these. That's not a problem. We're still gonna sand with 320, 220 actually, and go all the way up to 400 on this board. So those will go away very quickly. Also, I kind of do that so I know that I'm actually completely bottoming out and that I'm indeed going to be deep enough, because that's very important for this step. Okay, next I'm going to cut the taper in the fretboard and get rid of all this tear away here. Okay, to cut the taper in the fretboard, we're just using a simple cross-cutting sled on set up on the table saw here, and got our blank here, and we have lines that we've marked at both ends to establish where our taper is going to start on this end and end up on this end, and once again up on this side on this end and end up on this end. So what we need to do is we'll transfer these marks to the top face of our blank here, so that when we line this thing up we can actually see the marks, because we need to be pushing this end right up against the fence here, so we won't be able to see our mark if we don't transfer it on that side. And we're going to be flipping this over and doing the same procedure on the other side, so you know it'll be this end here that will be up against the fence at that point. So that's why we got to transfer these ones as well. So we'll transfer them, and then we'll take where these lines are, and we'll simply line the line up so that our point is right on the inside edge of this kerf that's in the fence. You can see that kerf there, and we'll line that up so that it's right on the inside edge of that. And then we'll come down to the nut side here, and we want to line it up to this kerf that's in the table. So we will Just simply move it into place and it's right there. Okay, so we know that this blade is going to be traveling in a straight plane from this point to that point, and it will give us, you know, our angle that we're looking for. And we're going to stick this to the table with two-sided tape. So we'll put the two-sided tape down, just a square in the front and a square in the back, and then we'll, you know, position this into place, get it where we want, stick this end down and kind of move this area into place, get it to where you want it, and then stick it down and make sure that it's exactly where we want to be. And like I said, make sure that your blank is pushed up against the fence at the back here, and with the fence stopping it from going laterally and the tape sticking it on the table, it's not going to move at all whenever you cut it. Okay, so you get it all set up like that, get the point onto the inside edge of this kerf on both ends, and then you run it through the saw, pull it back, shut the saw down, wait for everything to stop, pull your piece of stock out, spin it around this way, and you do the same thing, but you got to remember now that this is the nut side, and then this is the back side of the fretboard now. So you have to line your nut mark. Your nut mark's going to be here. You line that up to this kerf on the fence, and then you got to line this one up to the kerf on the table. You know, one thing I got to mention too is you want to change the tape. So you make your first cut. When you peel this off, you're going to want to peel the tape off your table and replace that as well, so you get a nice good bond on this second cut as well. And once again, make sure that it is pushed up against the fence. So once you got all that in place, run it through again, pull it back, shut your machine off, let everything stop moving. Peel your blank up off the table, and you should have a perfectly tapered fretboard at that point. Okay, so we've got the fretboard tapered here. Looks pretty good, nice and even. Take our nut here, set it on the end, see how we're doing for thickness. Looks like a beautiful thing. Okay, excellent. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the electronics here. And I've already just set some in place or whatever. We're going to take a couple wires that we've pre-cut here, and we're going to run them along these channels here, all the way along, and then we're going to make all our connections. You can see on the wires, I've stripped just a little piece off in a couple areas where we're going to be making connections. I've done the same with the ground wire. So we'll go ahead and we'll put all these kind of in place and solder it all together and see if it lights up. Okay, so you can see we've got our LEDs installed here. I just hooked them up to a battery to check them out, make sure that they're all working. They all seem to be working fine. And as you can see here, we've got all of these channels here covered in our first coat of epoxy. And what we're going to do is we're going to sand this epoxy down, get it flat, and then any of these areas like this right here that are still a little bit low, they'll be more evident once we get it all sanded flush, and then we'll be able to go back and fill those little areas in. Now, one thing on here is that there's little resistors in these circuits. There's one here, and then one up here, and these didn't quite sit exactly underneath the finish. It's very, very close. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand around those, and we're going to leave these protruding a little bit, and then when we go to install it on the actual neck, what we'll do is we'll cut tiny little pockets in the neck just in these locations, so that the rest of the board sits nice and flat on the neck. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and sand this down, and we're also going to sand down these markers. They're sticking up about a 1/16 of an inch proud of the surface, so we'll take a radiusing beam and level those off and sand off some of this epoxy. Okay, as you can see, our board is all sanded right up to 400 grit. I think that's about as far as I'm going to go on it. I did have to go through using 220, 320, and then 400. So, and I took a little bit of material off the top of the board. So what I'm going to be doing is using this tool here. I'm going to be measuring the depth of the fret slots. So I'll just take this, I'll stick it in the fret slot, and we've already measured the fret wire that we're going to be using, and the bottom of the tang comes pretty much right up to the bottom of that second line in. So we want to make sure that we're at least up to the second line here on our slots, and if we're not, we're going to use this to deepen it. Okay, this is a nice aggressive little slot deepening saw here, and works really well. It takes off a lot of material fast, but it's a little bit thinner than the actual fret slots themselves, so you got to kind of work it around as you're doing it. Yeah, I can't really see it that well, but it looks like we're almost up to the second line, so we got to take a little bit of material out from there yet. And these things are great too if you're wanting to deepen a fret slot on a neck that's already bound, for example. Yeah, we can get right into the corners here. You can see how it's got that hook on this side and hook on the other for getting right into the corners. Really good tool. Definitely recommended. Another thing is, after we're done that, getting a proper depth, we have to go back with a triangular file here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this file and we're going to run it just a couple strokes up each of these fret slots. And there's a couple reasons for doing this. First reason, in the future when these frets start to wear out and this thing goes in for a refret, then if you have this little kind of shoulder that you make into the cut, like if you look at the side profile of the fret slot, we're looking for this type of deal here. And if you have this little shoulder, when you pull the old frets out, the barb doesn't tend to catch on the edge and tear it out. So and ebony fretboards are you know, they're famous for doing things like that. So just this little added little bit of you know, you do it now and then that way down the road, it makes it for a much easier job. You know, the repair guy will probably thank you for doing so. And the other reason though is if you look at fret wire and you look at say like an end profile of it in the tang here, and you got the head, the crown, whatever. When it comes out, like it's extruded, and when it comes out of the machine, you can see it's got a little bit of a round profile here as it goes into the tang. Well, if you try and stick that round profile into a flat slot like this, and then what's going to happen is this isn't going to seat properly, because you know, this is going to interfere with that corner of the piece of wood. So if we take this file and we just simply file that corner down a little bit, it'll help this fret to sit in the slot a little bit nicer, and it'll make sure it comes down right flush with the top of the board, the bottom of the crown. So yeah, so we're going for this, and like I said, it just takes a couple of quick passes, just so you can barely notice it. You know, if you don't want to do it too much, because then you're going to have problems with your frets, you know, going in straight, you know what I mean, whether you be hammering them in or pressing them in with an arbor. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we've got all these fret slots cut to the proper depth now. You know, just deep enough so the fret tang fits nice snugly in there, and the crown sits flat on the surface of the fretboard. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back with this triangular file here, and we're going to cut this these chamfers into the top of this fret slot. So what we're going to do is, you don't need to take off a lot of material here. All you need to do is take this, set it into the slot, and you know, just slightly following the radius in the board, just give it a couple shots here with this triangular file. Okay, and you want to do that a couple more times. Okay, so we can see with a close-up view here our chamfer that we've filed into this fret slot, and it's pretty consistent all the way up, so that's good. So that's one down. 26 to go. You know, that only took about 30 seconds anyway, so about, you know, 30 seconds to a minute for each one of these. You should be done, you know, in about a half an hour anyways. You know, by no means don't rush it, because you can overcut this, so just take your time, make sure you got it to the perfect depth, move on to the next one. And once we get all that done, we'll be able to move on to the next phase of the project, which will be doing the neck blank and the body wings. So first step of that, of course, is going to be picking our actual lumber that we're going to be using. Okay, so I'm going to get these all finished up here, and then we can move on to the next step.